appreciate that. May have people filtering in. For those of you online, we're just a little crazy on this side of things. So just a couple heads up. We have a new course. So there's a new course for this semester. So it's the white background, and the code is also on the handout that should be in front of you. I don't have it at a 90-degree angle on the table, so it's a little kitty Kawunkas, please forgive me. But there is a code on there, so you can go to just that URL right there, navigate to that URL. If you're online, you can just navigate to the URL that you see on the screen. And you'll be enrolled as a student, and you'll be able to interact with today's activities. So there is a new course shell. Also, by way of announcement, as always, Kathy Binkowski, for those of you online, she's available on the YouTube chat. She's also available here as well. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to her or contact her throughout the week. Indeed, about anything related to learning. Hello, Bill.
Hi, Lane.
The email address and telephone are on the screen. Last bit of announcement before we start, just to give people a chance to sit down. If you need to get bagels, it's okay. It's don't want you to go without. On the back is a list of upcoming events. One of the big ones. There's a really new book table discussion, Canvas Basics, led by me later this week. And then also registration is open for the online and blended teaching program by Dylan Bart. And the first session is February 14th. I believe there's still a few spots left for that. And that's a two-part series. It comes with a certificate, right, Ed? I think it does.
Yes. If you do the...
Yeah,
If you do the work, you have to do a little bit of work, but the certificate. So that's a really good program that Dylan is putting on as well. So just some highlights of what's coming up. Today, super happy to invite Ed Price, one of CETL's very own today. He'll be talking to us about the Canvas Gradebook. And just a little bit of background on Ed. He is new to UW Milwaukee, so just kind of give some highlight reel here of all he's done. Ed Price received his BA from Marquette in Communication and Education, then his master's in Administrative Leadership from right here at UW Milwaukee. So if it's Panthers versus Marquette.
Always Marquette.
Okay, all right, that's honesty, okay. Ed taught middle school math. Very brave individual, for 18 years, as well as lectured at a number of local universities. 5 years ago, he began work in the Office of Instructional Design at Cardinal Stritch, and began as a teaching, learning, and technology consultant right here at CETL over 6 months ago.
Yeah, July. Yeah.
And today he'll speak to us about his work to make feedback and grading more impactful for his students. Welcome, Mr. Price.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I'm just going to escape out of here. Much more than it deserves.
And then as Ed getting set up, if you haven't signed in, please do so. So that otherwise they won't let us have bagels. So this is really in your interest.
Quite serious.
Did everybody sign in? I'm just saying, no, I signed in. Everybody, sure. I did, I signed in.
You got it?
Just right on, right, I don't need to beg. It's okay. I don't want to deprive anyone. I know how that can affect you.
So,
Coffee's good too. Yeah.
I don't drink coffee here, so.
interesting start to the semester.
It is an interesting start.
Yes.
That's why I'm so snarky.
And of course, as we talked about it, it's clear there's no snow. There's no reason for there to be 12 accidents on the freeway, but there are. So we're scrambling to get things going. So Lane came to me and said, hey, we should do something in the active teaching lab. What do we want to talk about? And we talked about a couple things and decided we should kind of talk about the Canvas Gradebook. And as you said, my majority of my background comes from K-12, where it's pretty much a non-negotiable that you have grades and grades posted. It's also a non-negotiable that parents crawl up there to see everything. So the idea of transparency in grading is pretty much ingrained in what I have done, because students want to see it, parents want to see it, your administrators want to see it. So, and kind of how that, as you said, I transitioned 5 years ago at Cardinal Stritch, and I've been using Canvas since I've been there. So, and I've also adjuncted some classes there. So Elaine said, well, why don't we talk about some things about Canvas Gradebook? And again, this is me, and my card is somewhere, and you can always get us at cedar-lake.uwm.edu. So I kind of thought about this presentation on like, why do I use the gradebook, or why would you use the gradebook? And to kind of go off presentation, because we just had a meeting with our LMS admin yesterday, that of the people using Canvas at UWM, 85% of those people are using the Canvas gradebook, which I thought was a pretty impressive number. And that's almost double of what people were using the gradebook in D2L. So who knows, maybe our workshops are actually working and we're kind of fitting in there. But the idea of why using the gradebook, and I thought I use the gradebook basically for transparency of grading. So students know how they're being graded. So, and we have worked, and I've worked with people that like, well, I keep things on a spreadsheet, and I do the spreadsheet and this, that, but it's not very visible to students. And that information, I think students need that feedback. One, they need the affirmation of what they've done has been graded some way, and that they can see it. I also think it's really important for students to understand their progress in the course, so they can see where things are going in the course, see how they're doing. There's none of that guessing at midterm. How am I doing? How am I not doing? How are things going? And in general, I think it's a great place to keep records. Because everything is in one place. I don't have things on my OneDrive. I don't have things on a Jump Drive. I don't have things here and there. And it's kind of a central repository for what I'm doing in the course.
Ed, actually, I'm just seeing Lane's Google Drive. Can you share?
We should be on this, right?
I think it might have been just sharing. Did you just share a window rather than the desktop?
Share the window. Yeah. So if you go to the Teams.
Yep.
Okay.
And switch it.
To the,
So should I just be quiet?
I think if you.
Just do if you click that share again, let's see if there's, or the kebabs.
Here.
And then do share again. And this time share the desktop.
Good?
Go Brewers.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah. Not confident with their off-season moves, so, but that's
You had the logo up there.
a whole different lecture. So, and then we kind of talked about, so why do I use it, and basically my experience with the gradebook, because I think any experience that you have kind of grows over time. And basically my experience with gradebook, overall it's been really great, and I think students appreciate that the gradebook is being used, and students, for the most part, become, the downfall at first was that they become a little point focused. And I think there are ways as we kind of go through this, and as Lane will kind of go through on the technical side and Canvas side of things, that was hard for me when I started to do this presentation. I'm like, wait, I'm not doing that portion of things. This is what I usually do in my day. I'm like, I have to leave that part. But I think one of the good things was that they became point focused, and long term, you got to kind of shift them away from it. It's just about points. It's just, a class can't be just about collecting some points for doing this, collecting some points for doing that. And I think we don't have to talk you into why that's important in general. So what happened with students is that they became more aware of grading and how the grading affects their progress in class. And I thought too that students were better able to understand their progress in class and the due dates in class. And if there's 20 people in the room, we could have 20 different views on due dates and things like that, and that's kind of not what I'm here to convince you of. But when you have things in the gradebook and have things in Canvas that has a grade attached, a date attached to it, it really pushes it to the forefront. It helps them organize. We have to be even more organized than they are to help them kind of progress through the class, because they, I look at a student has 4 to 5 instructors. They have, it's like you reporting to 4 or 5 bosses with 4 or 5 different things that they're expecting. So we have to be very clear in what we expect of them, right? So in my journey with the gradebook as it went on, kind of there are some things that I've learned and kind of developed over time. I've learned one, when you post things in the gradebook, they check their grade more often. Strangely, if they have more information, they actually go there and they look for it. And I learned that the gradebook kind of became the start of a conversation around grades and assessments. We'll get into that a little bit more. And I found that there were less questions and confusion in grading when rubrics were attached to assignments, rather than just dumping points into things. And that could be a whole different active teaching lab about rubrics and how to develop rubrics and things like that. So over time, when I used it, what I learned and how I adjusted some things over time, basically were these, and I'll kind of get into more, that I found that I need to set the gradebook from the start. I think when you're starting your Canvas course, it's only fair to students that your assignments are listed, that they know what's coming up, that they know how the points are going to be built in the class, they know how they're going to be graded. And I know that's tough sometimes, but if the more information that they have, they can see how things would develop. And having it set from the start, like if this is worth 10 points on your syllabus, it needs to be worth 10 points in your grade book. And not all of a sudden, at the end of the semester, you're in there with your grade book adjusting things. So having it set from the start, I think, lessens the issues towards the end that you're going to get with emails of, how am I doing? Am I going, and the ultimate question, am I going to pass this class? I'm like, I don't know. But I think I've worked with a lot of instructors that come in kind of in week 15 of class, and they're like, hey, can you help me set up my grade book? And I'm thinking, for next semester? Sure. And they're like, no, this one. I'm like, ooh, this is going to be a disaster. And as we kind of adjust things, I need to tell them, as you're starting to adjust your grade book, realize that those grades are going to fluctuate a lot. And all of a sudden, your students that thought they were doing really well may be in the other directions. And miraculously, so for some of the other ones, they might be thinking, it's Christmas early. All of a sudden, my grade has moved from one place to the other. And I don't think that's fair to do to a student who's thought they've been doing well so far. So setting the grade book and having it match your syllabus from the start, I think, was one of those things that I found really, really important. When I switched things in the grade book from points, I got a lot of, we'll call it feedback from students. Like, what is going on with that? Why is this happening? And I don't think it's fair to them. One of the other things about the grade book is I think you need to manage the expectations with them, just as you would in anything. Like, just because you turn something in and hit the submit button, you're not going to get that grade back right away. Minus if it's an automatic quiz or something like that. But manage the expectations of when you should expect grading to come up, how often you should expect to see it. And I think that's fair from their side. Like, if you submit something, I'm going to tell you that I will grade these within this many days. That they're actually looking for that feedback. Right? Just as you would if you submitted anything for a job or an application or anything, you would expect some kind of expectation. Manage your expectations of that. I think using the announcements in conjunction with grading kind of started to create more of a narrative around grading. And I probably did these slides in a different direction. Actually, these clipboard. We'll talk about the difference between automatic and manual release, and mine were manually released grades. At first they were automatic release, and that wasn't great, but sending out an announcement to students in general in the class before I release grades, hey, I'm releasing these grades, and Lane has some examples of these things, so I don't want to dig into his presentation. He's going to be like, what did I have you do this for? But more or less talking to them about what grade is coming out, how it was graded, general observations of X, Y, Z, if there were some, or, things I put in there like, don't just look at the points, there are comments on the document for you as well. Now, I realize 75% of the students are just gonna look at the points and move on, but at least I've kind of covered it and said, there's more to your grade than just the points. There's some narrative there for you to use as well. So I would usually, when I progress through this, would send out some kind of announcement and then release the grades. Right? I also kind of learned to use the finer points of the grade book. I discovered by accident that there's actually a notes column in the grade book where you can, if you go into the grade book and go to view, you can notes and it will create a notes column. And that notes column, which is over here, I blanked out the students' names, you can add notes in here that are only visible to you as the instructor. So you could keep like a quick note like, contacted the student on this, because I know in my mind, I'm like, I'm gonna remember that. I'm gonna walk away and like 5 minutes later, I'm gonna be like, what?
Yeah.
Because you're in a class with 50 students or 40 students, you go from this class to this class, you'll have all intentions to remember things, but it's just, in and out. So that notes column was kind of helped me, at least I could say, talk to the students about this or this. It was a place for me to kind of keep notes in the grade book where I could look right away. All right. I also kind of used the finer points of the grade book with the, those 3 buttons that in Casino we call the kebab. That for 3 months when I was here, I'm like, why? What is this? It looks like a shish kebab. So, but using that bump out that you can sort your students by high or low, you can message students who, I think I used one of those, yeah. Message students who haven't yet submitted, kind of as a, I can go in real quick, and anyone who hasn't submitted, I can be just like, hey, just a gentle reminder, the due date for this is tomorrow, and I haven't seen you submit yet. Are there any questions that you have? And usually that gentle reminder is enough for them to go, all right, I got it. And I know we're not managing, this is part of my K-12 background, where I kind of had to manage them as a second parent. But you also know that there are students in your classes that kind of need that little nudge every once in a while. And we start to talk about student retention and those best practices. Sometimes they need that little nudge along the way. Or it's the morning after things have been due and you've got 4 or 5 people that haven't. Quick message of, hey, just want to let, quick question, were there any technical problems that you were having with Canvas? And there weren't. That did cause you not to be able to get that thing in, and sometimes it's just like, I got it, things like that. So I think using those finer points of the grade book kind of help you out. And the difference, I think the big difference that I learned over time was Canvas is defaulted to set to automatically release grades. You enter a grade in the grade book, shoots it out to them. Enter it, shoots them out to them. And that works for some things, but I think there are a lot of times where, as I kind of said before, I should have put these in different order, learning to figure out to do the manual release and then have some kind of narrative about the grading that went out to them and then releasing the grades. And I'm sure Lane will show you this on the technical side where to change these things. But when you manually release the grades, it holds all the grades until you go to manually release them, push them out. And at least then I know I can double check because going down here, keying things in could be wrong. That freaks the student out. And at least it gives you a chance to check things. It also holds all your comments to one point, and you can use an announcement to send out some things about their narrative grading. So I think this was kind of one of the, it's a little thing, but I think it's made a lot of difference in how I communicate grades with students in general. So, these are kind of the 6 things that over time I've changed from how I do things from one point to the other. General, that's kind of like my journey with the grade book, and I was really super encouraged to hear yesterday that of the staff of faculty using Canvas at UW, the 85% of people are actually using the grade book. But as I would tell you, from the first time I used it to now, I think I use it better. So hopefully we can start to have these conversations about how people use it. Any quick questions before I hand things over to Lee?
I don't know if this is specific for you or for the group, but when you guys put in low stakes assignments, so maybe there's 2 points and the student got 1 out of 2 points, do you put that in the grade book from the beginning? Or do you wait until students have time to accumulate some of those low stakes points so they don't freak out and think they're failing because they missed a 2-point assignment out of 500 points? Like how do you navigate?
I think one question is what kind of grade book you have. If it's a weighted grade book and these are in a category.
No, it's not weighted. So maybe I should weight it.
You could, but it's still gonna, I realize what you mean, like, if you have one assignment and it's worth 2 points and they get one, all of a sudden they're at 50% of the class and they're like, what?
Right.
How am I failing this class already when I just turned
Right.
something
Well, and
in?
the whole point of low stakes is to like show them what you want them to do and kind of train them so that when it's worth something.
That's part of maybe the narrative around the grading, like, this is one of the very first assignments you have, the way, I just had lunch with a guy I used to work with at Strinch the other day, and in his syllabus, he puts this paragraph about the brutality of math. Like, if you've got 4 assignments and you do 3 of them and you do them really well, you're still at a 75%. The brutality of math takes over, and the fact that the averages just don't work out. So I think part of that is the communication around them to say, these are low stakes assignments, realize these are worth 1 or 2 points. Your whole class is worth 500, 1,000 points or whatever. So these things will be available over time, but these are also low stakes, but the assignment happened because I want you to see kind of how things are done. And then it begs whether, do you allow them to redo them? There's also the option in any assignment to not count towards the final grade, so you can check that box for a while and maybe uncheck it. But I think you kind of have to have that communication with them.
It's like the narrative you're
Yeah,
talking about.
like the narrative, like,
It's a good
this is only
opportunity.
worth 2 points, your next quiz is worth 100 points, but this should reflect, this is more how practice and how we're doing things, but again, I think if you don't give it any points and if you don't put it in the grade book, their natural thing, and I think any person's natural thing would be like, I'm not worried about it. No points, nothing to worry about.
Okay.
So I still think they need something anchored in their equity, which is a grade.
So I literally just got an email from a student. I had a 4-point quiz out of 1,000, and there was a mistake in the quiz where the 2 questions weren't showing up. And so the student was like, "Hey, like this is messed up." So I went and I fixed it, and I emailed the student and I said, "Hey, like I gave you another attempt. We'll do it again." And the student missed the "go do it again" part and was like, "But now I have a 65 in the class." And so
Read the whole email.
that's part of it, but I've
Read the
also
whole-
learned that like points to students, they don't think about the weighted average. So if I tell them like these are only 10% of 40% of your grade, like they don't get that is so diluted.
Right.
So what I've done is for low stake things like making the points tiny. We used to have these assignments that the software defaulted to 100 points, and even though it was only like 8% of the grade, the students would freak out over a 97 out of 100
Right.
because 100 points. And so just shrinking them to 10 points. Right, it doesn't matter for me because the math is the same.
Right.
But the students were like, "Oh, it's only 10 points. That's not so bad now." So yeah, I don't know how to deal with that early semester. Like, "Oh no, the sky is falling because I missed 1 out of 2 points." But I've found like if you want to make it small, make the points small. That's kind of their language.
Even if you were to use a weighted grade book, I would still go with the answer, making it worth small points. Because even if they said it's 100 points, but you're putting it in the 1% category, they see that 100 points
Yeah.
and kind of freak out.
It's like why we have our gas is $249.99 or buy something that's $199. It's the psychology of the number. It's 1 is less than 2, even though it's a
Psychology and the brutality.
Did anyone else have a question?
I'm gonna hand it over.
Well, I just want to reinforce something that Ed said, and this was taught to me a couple jobs ago where we used Moodle and as the LMS, and starting when you're doing the design in the LMS is to know what you're going to do in the grade book and then build the course around that. And I've even in this past semester I made some mistakes of when I did the rubric, the points didn't add up to the same points, and so I had to go back and manually do the grades. But having the grade book really drive everything you do in terms of the course design, it can be very helpful discipline to be like, all right, why am I putting this here? Why am I putting this here? And making sure that the students are paying attention to what matters.
Yeah, I think it's only kind of fair to them that they have that real clear.
And I've also found, I don't know if there's workaround, sometimes the grade book and my math don't always agree, but they're always within, a very small margin. I'm like, you're close, it does, directionally you're good, a third of the way through the semester, that a third of a point in your grade doesn't matter.
I did have a question, Ed. You mentioned that you were you sent out an announcement to the students about the grades when you released them, but you did that through an announcement versus an email. Why
Oh,
did
yeah.
you use the announcement?
I use the announcements over the email because the announcements live in the class. So even if they ignore their email, which they will, I know, hard to believe, because emails for old people. I get it. Maybe if we did Snapchat or some TikTok or something like that. But at least then when they went back to the class, the announcement would be in the class as well. So even if they freak out about the grade and they go and they click on the course card to the homepage, there's still, it still lives there. And that's kind of, again, when I said it's a place as a record, I can go back to a student, they're like, I didn't know about X, Y, Z, and I'll be like, look at the class. I didn't know about, look at the class. I didn't, look at the class. Like, they get the same response to me all the time. Look at Canvas first. If you still have questions after that, I'm not blowing you off, but kind of, the parenting side of me needs to nudge them along with things, but the other side of it is now it's there, and if you still have questions, go there. And about third of the way through the semester, the questions get less, because they kind of know, like, look at the class, look at the Canvas class, because the announcements kind of build on top of it. Did you have a question?
I did. I think just to add on to everything we've talked about is ensuring that, upfront the students know and understand. I feel the pain of those low stakes, and they're very important. They're an excellent teaching tool. And one of the things that I've taken away from Connie Schroeder's classes is that, when you set your percentages up, if that is a low stakes, then you're in charge of what it is. As long as it comes out to 100 at the end of the total, it's good. And that, they know that up front, when that explanation of the syllabus, that first day is so important, to make sure that everybody's on the same page and understands that. And then, or the other thing that I sometimes do if I've got low stakes, that it's not really a grade, I'll have something in class. I call it that old-fashioned pop quiz, where they're like, oh, and I'm like, don't worry about it, I'm not gonna add it to your grade, let's just see where we're at.
Oh, yeah.
Then you've got a good feeling, okay, this I don't have to worry so much about, I understand that, but here's an area where I'm weak, so.
Letting
just
students
a thought.
see that, absolutely. Well, thank you, Ed. Bill, yeah.
And I've got a quick question, just building on something that Ed had. When you're in SpeedGrader, and if you're set up for automatic release, and I don't know if you're gonna cover this, is that then when you put the grade in and you submit it, it's automatic?
Go on. Yep.
Okay, because I'll just build on something that Ed said. This happened to me that, you're grading and like you're in SpeedGrader and you get 2 or 3 students in and you're like, how come they're all answering this, not doing what I asked them? And then you go back and you read the prompt and you're like, oh, mistakes were made. It wasn't my mistake, somebody did. I screwed up, I'm sure, right?
It was Canvas.
And you're like, oh, and now I have to go back and redo it because the wording really was very ambiguous. So now I want to go back and readjust
And I've had
that.
that
So-
situation too, like, okay, after looking at all these tests, question number 3, how I wrote it, didn't obviously convey to
Right.
you, because 80% of you got it wrong, either.
Canvas does
Right.
that often where it
Right, it
translates
just
your
changes
stuff.
my words, yeah, I get it. So I tell them, I've eliminated number 8, so when you go in there, or whatever question it was, things like that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, go for
I
it.
really
Nathan.
appreciate
Thank you.
your presentation, so thank you for that. I did. I always like to show new things as I discover them too in Canvas. So one of the new things that I've seen in Canvas recently is the screen size, the adaptive screen size. As your screen will get smaller, it'll go to a mobile view, and you'll see it pop, and there you go. So that's the mobile view, and that's what it's going to look like. So your navigation bar on the left disappears, and if you click on the hamburger, there might be an official name for that, but it's a
It's
hamburger.
actually hamburger.
It's a hamburger.
I looked it up.
Nice.
And the kebab is also called an ellipsis.
Well, yeah, that one's not.
I like kebab though
like
because
kebab.
it's a hamburger kebab. I mean, which do you want?
I want
What are your
both.
favorite meats?
So if you click on the hamburger, you'll get your global navigation bar. That pops up right there. And if you want your course navigation bar, you click on the little chevron or the arrow pointing down, and that'll pop up there. So that's going to be the mobile view, and it's also, if you squeeze it down really small, that's what you're going to be seeing as well. And I think that was kind of new because I haven't seen that last semester. So I just wanted to pass down the tech chip of, this is your global navigation bar, the hamburger, and the little chevron is your course navigation bar, and that's how it's going to pop up. All right, so your students are going to be seeing that as well, so just so you know kind of what people are looking at. Now, we have, if you've been a regular attender at Active Teaching Lab, which many of you have, you may remember that we have talked about the gradebook in the past. And so I put links. They're on the paper. They don't work as well as they do digitally. I have links, or just kind of a little reference point of what dates we talked about the gradebook. The 9/25, so last September when we talked about it, that had all the updates. So we kind of covered some of the basics in last spring and then also last fall of some of the nitty gritty. Today I was going to talk about some different grading techniques, but I wanted to give people an opportunity before we kind of went into some pedagogy or kind of different grading techniques or methods. Is there any questions that you had about the gradebook specifically? Like, I just had this burning question of like, how does this happen? Or I'm really curious as some kind of the basic outline or organization of the gradebook. And if you had any of those questions, I really wanted to take a moment and talk about those because I don't want to be accused of false advertising. I have gradebook on here I need to talk about. So anything that anyone had that they'd really like to know about the gradebook?
Well, one problem that I've encountered pretty regularly is I keep a spreadsheet with all the grades because I've grown not to trust the gradebook just because it has a mind of its own. And that way I've got a record if the whole system disappears, whatever. It's not infrequent that the number that I have is slightly different than the number in the grade book. And I don't know if there's a way around this, but sometimes I'm just like, you're close, and if you're a lot different, I will let you know.
Right.
To my students, because it's frustrating because I don't have time to go back and like micromanage the math and be
Sure.
And I don't know how much of that is just the way that they calculated slightly differently for the cumulative grade than I calculated.
I think that's just how the calculations go in an Excel spreadsheet. They're set up by you. Canvas, they're going to be set up by you, but they're also going to be run through Canvas. So the math will work because the internet hasn't exploded in the Canvas community of like what on earth is going on, which there's the high-end users that are doing exactly what you're doing. So it's within a margin, and I would count that to just how Excel is calculating it and versus how.
And always as you get closer to the end of the semester, the numbers start to converge much more closely.
Sure.
It's early on where it's just like, I don't know, I think there's some weird things going on in Canvas that just, whatever. And I found that with other learning management systems too, that I don't know if there's like they don't count zeros or count zeros and
Yeah, it does weird things. The weighted. So mine is a weighted average, and it does weird things early on when like there's zero scores in one of your categories. It doesn't account for that.
yeah, and that's what I found.
Yeah.
And I imagine it's just how you're dividing things when you're subtracting, and then that's going to change the numerator, the denominator.
And if there's a zero in a category in the weighted grade book, it's like it doesn't exist.
Right.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, what is the small category takes over the whole thing, and then all of a sudden you have one thing that really.
Right.
So it's not accurate, it's just a different calculation method that rectifies itself towards the end as some of the
Right.
the differences in how things are dropped or added.
Yes.
Yep, and then dashes not being zeros because we've seen that a lot, people not realizing that, right? People not realizing that dashes are null, not zero. So that can be a problem.
Yes.
I was wondering, do you want to show people how to hide that calculated total? I've had a number of people
Sure, why don't you walk us through
I
that?
really don't, yeah, sure, if you go to, I've had a number of people saying, I really just don't want the calculated total at the end showing at the beginning of class for low stakes because
Right.
people lose their
Because
minds,
they're-
and you can hide that.
Okay, and that's the
So-
one that I'm looking at is the calculated.
Yeah, and so you go to settings.
Whatever.
Ed's computer is a PC. Therefore, it's incredibly slow.
It's actually meaning nothing.
No, I'm using it. I'm saying I'm slow.
So if you, if you go to settings
All right.
and
More options.
more options down there, and sometimes it's actually, more options is actually below depending, and it's hide totals in student grades summary. So it'll take that out for your students. So there have been times that I've done that for people, especially like you said, if you've got this low stakes quiz and it's 1 out of 2 and now you have 50% and people are losing their minds, it might be better at the beginning of the semester to say, I've hidden the calculated total initially specifically because of that. So then they still see their points, but it's not like 50%, well, yeah, it's 1 out of 2. So anyway,
Can you tell me again where that was?
Yes,
Okay,
actually,
yeah, I'm
settings.
sorry, I don't
You're
know.
at, you're at, you know.
So if you go to settings, and then you go all the way to the bottom, there'll be more settings.
It
Lane,
doesn't
will
matter.
you, will you
Yep.
go in there one more time?
Yep.
Because the other thing is, you might wanna tell people how to
Yep.
hide how students can see all the averages.
Course details.
Yeah, great
So
distribution.
course details.
So settings, course details.
Yeah. More options. That'll open up kind of just another window at the bottom.
Right.
And then high totals and student grade summary.
And in small, oh, go
As
ahead.
Sarah said too, I think
Yeah, the next one down.
the next one down
Distribution.
is probably good, unless, you know, you're going Game of Thrones and they need to be better than the other ones.
Yep.
Hiding the grade distribution graphs. They don't
Yeah.
need the box and whisker plots to know like, oh, I'm in the lower 25 percentile, I'm the higher 25 percentile.
I had a student over Christmas that was like, well, I know that somebody got 100%, but the average in your class is in the 80s, and so, you know, these questions must not have been fair because everybody couldn't get 100%, and I'm like, why are you comparing yourself to, yeah. And then he's like, well, I knew where he was getting it from, but he's like, and clearly this person failed, and I don't
Like-
want people to know people are failing, nor do I
Yeah.
want them to, yeah, so.
Yeah, I always have people
It's
turn
really
that off.
easy for them to see the plots. I think it's right in the grade book for
So,
that.
Okay.
yeah.
Yes,
There's two last columns, right? So there's an assignments column with the grades to replot, and then a total column for the high.
Let's look at that. I'm gonna go to a different
So,
course.
If you are grading like as you go, they know exactly what grade the person has, and then it
The
changes.
assignments will be all the assignments from the total.
And they can see the whole distribution.
Yeah, it depends on how you set up.
Yeah.
Because they'll know, like.
You may see a subtotal, so you'll have all your assignment columns, and then you'll have subtotals.
Comparisons are odious.
And then of the weighted grade book columns.
Okay, so.
So there we go. This is very wonky today. There we go.
Hey, you're showing my grades, I didn't give you permission.
Yeah. You can take that up with FERPA. There's the notes column. Students, Bill doesn't see that, so when I write was disruptive in class or something, I can see
That's
it.
right, we're gonna disinvite him.
And then here are the different assignments that I haven't filled in, and then these are subtotals right here for the different grade categories. And then, so important assignments, current lab experiment, and then this is the total. And this means that there are grades, the students aren't seeing this.
Right.
Because there's some that haven't been released.
So assignments are different from,
Yes, so if you hover over it, you're gonna see like, it turns like to a hyperlink, because that'll take you right to the assignment.
right?
Whereas these don't have that hyperlink, because these are just these are like those grade categories that you'd have in D2L. They're called assignment groups in Canvas. So that's just how you organize it in a weighted grade book. You'll put all of your categories under current lab experiments, or assignments, or quizzes, or discussions.
So it's just gonna give you a total for each of those things.
It's giving you a subtotal for each one of those categories.
And I actually named those groups current lab experiment total in my assignments page, so there's never any confusion later because everyone thinks these are assignments and they're trying to click on them, so
Really smart.
that has worked out very well for me.
So you highlight that it's a subtotal,
Yes,
the
yeah.
naming of it.
Because I've experienced a lot of confusion where people think that's an assignment.
Yeah.
Why did I get a 35? It's like, no, that's the total, or subtotal. So anyway, I put that in the assignments page as part of the group name, and people are much less
Quizzes
confused.
subtotal.
Yeah, quizzes subtotal.
Discussion
subtotal.
That's really
and
smart.
then there's
I like
no question about what it was.
Do you hide the total grade from students? Do they still get to see their average or their total score for the categories? Okay.
It just doesn't,
They
it
just
just
don't
doesn't
give
give
the final file.
just doesn't give everything at the bottom with the letter grade or the grade. So it gives them so you're using the weighted grade book, they would see like their average for the quizzes, their average for the labs, their average for the
Okay.
assignments, so they would see those things fleshed out.
Yeah.
They just wouldn't
And
see
then they would
how
still-
all that goes together.
They would still see that thing on the top right, which would be like the weight for that category.
Yep, they just don't
So
see
they
any.
could do the math.
Right.
But it might
They
be
would.
smart.
They could.
It
Some
might
of
be a
them
good
may.
idea though, towards the middle of the semester,
Right.
when you had a couple different assignments that, like they had an outlier of an assignment, they got a 50,
Right.
and then they got 100, 150, 100. Now their averages are more of like what in line reality is.
Now you've had all these things sent out, an announcement, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah.
Yeah.
You know, the
Absolutely.
narrative around it.
So that's, so let's take a moment and we'll see kind of how this works, and you can kind of see how the grades filter back to you. And I'm gonna post an announcement after you do an assignment. So I want you, if you have a computer, go to the course, Active Teaching Lab 20, and then you'll see on the home page at the top, there's an activity for us to do, in-class sample quiz. And so I want you to take that quiz, and then once everyone has done that, I am going to, I got one person submitted, huzzah. Then I'll release the grade, and I'll also send out an announcement kind of doing some of the things that Ed did, and that is making a narrative about that grade and that assignment so that the students can kind of see and understand that grade in context of a larger narrative versus just a grade dump. And that's what I think was so smart about what Ed was talking about, is not just having grades and that's it, but having a narrative around that grade. And maybe getting in front of what Sarah was talking about and saying, hey, I've seen some people struggle. This is one of the things that you struggled with. Let's look at that a little bit more in depth, or here's some more information about it. I think that's really good. Yes, ma'am.
I don't see DPT lab in my.
No.
You would have to sign up, and you'll have, so what you do,
Oh.
and so, yeah, so there are URLs right here on that front page. Go right there, and you just type that URL, and then you'll be added as a student, and then you'll be able to get in. Yep, absolutely. So I'll give you some time on that. And then I got one person that's submitted. It would be better if there was a few more. Let's see if we can get this going. 4, nice, all right.
We have some industrious, dedicated people here.
Yes, I do.
I'm not gonna submit one. I don't have a computer.
It's like a.
It was a good quiz too.
It was
I had to think hard about.
Oh, I'm lucky if I
I'm sure I got some. I don't remember when Mary Poppins.
I had I have a Disney trivia quiz in the basement. Pulled that sucker out yesterday. So
My daughter would excel at that. She would nail it.
I think I got the rest. It was just that first one was just a wild card cast. I thought it was a ruse, but
That
it
was on
was.
Chimney Sweep.
But Mary,
She danced in the park.
she danced on the.
Your phone? Do it on your phone.
Doing something.
No.
No.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get to less than an hour a day on my phone.
okay, so I see the people who have done it. So this is the Speed Grader. So I just popped into Speed Grader to kind of see people who have submitted. If you haven't seen Speed Grader before, there's some cool features here that I always like to point out. I can see everyone who has turned in, which is really nice, and I see that little orange dot, meaning I haven't graded that yet, because there's something for me to grade here. I can see, oh, okay, I'm looking at Jane, and she got the Mary Poppins question.
Oh, I got them all wrong.
No, you got them right.
I got 2 right.
And then the correct answer, Great Mouse Detective, wasn't
It's got mouse.
fun and fancy free. We all, you need to go get Disney Plus and check that. I've never seen that one. This was a new one for me. I was like, oh, I didn't know Margaret Carey. They actually had a model like that served as the form for Tinkerbell. Okay, all right. Crocodile's favorite food. Your answer was sushi, which was actually that was mentioned once that it was Captain Cook sushi that eat 'em raw. So it was actually the answer was Captain Cook. So I'll have to give you 0 for that, I'm afraid. I can also, though, one of the cool things is I can just select an answer, a question. I can update your score. Update scores. Oh, wait. Oh no, she got oh, there we go. I see it there. Oh, okay, so there's a couple. So she got 2 out of 6, which is, honestly, this is trivia. Okay. Okay, Captain Hook. There we go, 2 points. So I can just kind of go through each question by question. And there we go, question 5. Wow, that was industrious. And let's update that score. And keep on going here. And then I can keep on going down there. Captain Hook, there's 2 points. Update that score. One more I can grade. I got 5. Oh, there's no submission for the test students. So, okay. So I got the people graded. I can go to the grade book. And I can see, okay, well, I got a couple more. So I can give, I'll get to here. Let me get these so I can. So I'll click on, there we go, and I can go click on SpeedGrader. Cool thing is in SpeedGrader, I can see right away who has submitted and who hasn't. So I'm gonna look at the bottom, and you got pizza, no, incorrect, not pizza. All right, and then I can go and see, oh, Sarah hasn't been graded yet. Let's go and check that question. Oh, Captain Hook, 2 points, perfect. Update that score. So
That was the other Sarah.
That was this one.
But I did get it right, so.
All right.
You cheer me on, just not really.
So now I'm back in that grade book, and I can see the grades. Now, before I want to release them, I could send an email. Right there, I can message students who have been graded or have been submitted and give them that text. But I really like what Ed was doing, and that's creating that repository of information in the announcements, while at the same time simultaneously giving kind of a narrative around what we were talking about in the class or about what that goal of the quiz was. So I'm going to go to new announcement, and I'm going to pop that in. Click on new announcement, and quiz is graded. And then I'm going to pop in my text. There we go. So, I already prepped this beforehand. And then I'm just going to post this to everyone right away, or I can even delay it to when I intend to release it. So I'm going to click save. And now everyone who has been in the course will have got this announcement.
I know it's posted in Canvas. Do they have to sign up affirmatively to get an email to them?
No, it is. They have to deselect to opt out. Yep, absolutely. Now, this will normally show up. It's just some days life happens and Canvas doesn't want to pop up and show me the actual announcement at the top of the page. I'm going to go to the grades and then I'll release it.
Well, if you refresh it, yeah.
I tried it. I just
Lynn,
tried.
can you show set default grade for people? People use that quite a bit.
So the default.
Oh,
so the default. Yep.
A technique that people use a lot is how to set default grade.
Precise. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So I have a couple slackers in this course who didn't turn it in, Margaret.
I'm working on it.
Yeah. And so I can set a default grade for everyone who hasn't turned it in. I can give a 0, and I'll set that default grade. Margaret, please forgive me. I'm going to set the default grade of 0, and then for everyone who hasn't turned in that assignment, they're going to get a 0, but it won't override anyone else's.
Now, if you have that not set on manual but automatic, do they get it? They get it if they're set up to get an email for the grades. Did that email go out?
That would have gone out if it was automatic.
Yeah.
But I'll notice that this is manual.
Right.
So what I'm going to do is I can post grades. I want to post grades because I'll notice that all grades are hidden. So I'm going to post the grades. And then I can send this to everyone or everyone who's just graded, which actually is everyone now. The one thing you want to notice, if you click it to everyone, it will go out to everyone, and then it'll always, as soon as, if you give any updates, it'll automatically go out. Whereas if you just do graded, and let's say I hadn't given Margaret a 0, she won't be released automatically, right? So graded will only do the graded, and then you have to come back in again and re-release the people who've turned it in later, whereas if you do everyone, it's just everyone who's graded now and everyone who's going to be graded in the future automatically go out. So I'm going to set everyone, post it, and now everyone will have released it. You'll see those dots disappear, those orange dots, and the little eye with the line through it will disappear. Yes?
And with the automatic manual thing, you must do that through the settings, or could you go to the kebab and say, I just want it, on this one, I just want it manual because I'm monkeying around.
So default is automatic, and you can change that through these settings right here, and then grade posting policy.
Got it.
Whereas each assignment, then you can override that.
Okay.
And then set that to manual or
Okay.
post. Absolutely. Yeah. I really like, Ed convinced me of setting this to manual for everything and then kind of sending out an announcement or discussion about that grade. Because I think that's really important to just not give students a single solitary number or letter, but really setting up a narrative of around what happened. What did people struggle with? What were people learning? What did you want people to get out of it? Set up a narrative around that grade to make it so that there's more learning going on and focused on the future versus just that one point in time, how they did in the past. You really want them focusing on the future. How can they improve? Oh, this quiz, I see that you really struggled with this Mary Poppins quiz. Let's talk more about Mary Poppins and its meanings in mid-century American cinema. we'll talk more about that in class. Or look at this article to learn more about that film and its importance in history. That gives you students an opportunity, as soon as they get the grade, to then think about how can I improve in the future? Because this is what the instructor has identified as important, and maybe it'll show up in the midterm. But you want students to focus on future learning versus just, oh man, I got an 80 or a 1 out of 5, 2, I got a 50%. And that takes us to the back of this sheet. And I've been doing a bit of research on finding ways of increasing that narrative around the grade. And so there's actually a whole like pedagogy about that. And you've probably heard about this as colleges that don't have a grades book or anymore. They don't give grades. And that doesn't mean, I have actually a couple, UC Santa Cruz and Hampshire College, both don't have grades anymore. They don't give final grades anymore. They instead give you a narrative. And if you look at what they're doing, it's not like we're just trying to be quote unquote touchy-feely and not really hold people to high standards. It's instead of just giving you one letter to say how you did in the course, they're going to give you 2 paragraphs to talk about how you did and how you can improve even beyond the course. It's setting up your learning beyond just this moment in time, even just at the end of this course, but how you can use this information in the future and how you can improve in the future.
That systematically, they do that at Alverno.
Yep.
So that's
And that's, I mean, you might want to reach out to them to learn that, and
Yeah.
if professors want to learn, because that is one of their big marketing pushes is we're gonna actually prove that you learn by not giving you grades, but giving you intensive feedback.
So actually, I was in charge of CETL at Alverno, if anyone is interested in.
I mean, I'm
Yep.
not off base there.
No.
Okay.
Yep.
I have examples of this. I have kind of some discussion of what this means. I have examples of it. I have some syllabi. I have actually a whole committee on educational policy guidelines. So if you really want to kind of get into the weeds of what this means, you can set that up. Now, we don't do that here at Milwaukee, but you can easily implement that throughout the semester of of really focusing on narrative and less on the grades. And I think what even Ed was talking about is a nice way to start that conversation and really focusing. And I think that's a really good, robust way of moving the students away from, oh my gosh, I got a 50% on this 2-point assignment, or oh my gosh, this student got a 0. This means that your grades aren't fair. It's like, no, we can have a discussion of what we're doing in this class. I think that can help move it. So thank you so much for your attention today. It was really fun. I didn't get through everything. We had a lot of stuff going on, but we had such a really good discussion. I really appreciate your active participation. Really, that's what we're all about here at Active Teaching Lab. I give you that spiel every week. I really like this to focus, really thinking about new ideas, having that community of talking and discussing these ideas and these practices, and then always eating bagels as well. Always puts me in a better mood anyways. So I thank you for your time and attention today. Please don't forget to fill out the blue evaluation sheet. That really helps me out in improving for next week and even next semester. And then next week we'll be talking about undergraduate research with first-year students from Philip Owen. So he'll be talking about research assignments that he has first-year students doing in his class and how he kind of sequences a number of assignments together into a larger project and really focusing on students getting to do their own research, which is a really cool, I think, practice and idea, and really helping make kind of letting students see the practical application of what they're doing in classes. A really fun topic. So I'm looking forward to that next week. I hope to see you here, and hopefully the traffic will be much better for all of us as we make our way to campus. So thank you. Have a good week. Thank you to those of you who are online as well. Have a good week, everyone.